Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for registering and being with us today in our webinar. So today really is focused on some of the new features and a focus really on some of the latest additions that we've included recently. So we aim, well, this session is being recorded, so will be available afterwards. Should you want to share this with any of your colleagues, and please do. And we aim to keep this to the point, so we hope to be out here before 1:30 on the hour. We want to keep these sessions engaging, and please do ask questions as we go through. So just to check that you can hear me okay, see me okay on the screen. If you do have any questions, raise your hand, or in the Q&A area in Zoom at the bottom, you can ask your question there. So just to check, all of that's working. Maybe just type in the name of the company that you're from, and if you are a current Revizto user, or either or. And then Lewis and I will know that you can hear us loud and clear. Perfect, great stuff. The comments are making me smile already, fantastic. Right, so let's get to it. So my name is Rhys Lewis. I'm one of the directors at Revizto, and yeah, excited to be here today. So yeah, that's myself, and I'm pleased to be joined by my colleague, Lewis. Guy. Hey, Lewis.
Yeah, hello everyone. So yeah, my name is Lewis and I'm the technical director for Revizto. So I'll be running the workshop today, or the webinar today. So
perfect. With a little bit of help from me, I'll be in the background. So there's a number of things that we've included, but I mean, over the last 12, 20, 24 months, there's been a lot. I think there's a certain area that we want to focus on today, but you'll see some of the new features in 5.9 that we'll be running through today. And yeah, we'll get to it, I guess, Lewis. So if I stop sharing my screen and hand over to yourself, we can get into it. Perfect. I can see your screen, Lewis. So
perfect. It's yeah. So as I say, the point today is to run through some of the new features that were in 5.9, and also maybe touch briefly on some of the features that were added in 5.8 that some of you may or may not be aware of. So we're going to start with the improvements that we've made in the 2D space of Revizto. So in 5.8, which is obviously the previous version, we released the ability to search content on drawings. So every drawing that comes into Revizto now goes through an optical character recognition function, which means that all the text on the drawing sheets are now searchable, so we can now actually find information on the sheets. And then with 5.9, we've then improved that to actually highlight the information as well. So for example, let's say there's a fan core unit reference that you don't know where it exists, you don't know what drawing it's on. We can now just type it into here. So, and at the moment, nothing is coming up. But if I click on search content, it will now show me all the drawings where this note is actually relevant on the actual drawing. And when I double click on this to open it, we can now see that the actual reference has been highlighted. So we can see exactly where that is on the drawing sheet. So the ability to do this just makes it really easy to find information on 2D drawings. And again, the nice thing about doing this in Revizto is that it's searching every single drawing within the Revizto sort of platform all at once. You don't have to go through drawing like separately and search for them. So again, I can just type in, for example, the word atrium, and it's now showing me all the drawings that have the word atrium featured on it. And again, I can double click on this to open, and we can see that that's been highlighted. So this just makes it really easy to find references that are on 2D. And then from here, you can then just use our features that we've always had, our jump to 3D, for example, to jump to that location in the model and do that kind of thing. So the ability to search for the content on the 2D drawings is a really powerful tool, and something that we've improved significantly with highlighting it in 5.9. So that's the first thing that I wanted to show you. The second thing, and this, for some users, this has been long overdue. Since we introduced 5.9, Revizto 5 over a year ago, our camera share feature that was available in Revizto 4 hasn't been available. But now with 5.9, the camera share function is back. And the camera share function, if you weren't a user in Revizto 4, is an ability to share with other Revizto users your screen, and you can sort of have a conversation and talk about what's going on. So I can click on this button here, the camera share button. this now shows me everyone who's in the Revizto project. So currently there are 3 of my colleagues in this situation in this same Revizto project. But again, this could be the whole project team, and we have an ability to invite individuals or invite everyone into a camera share session. So I'm going to invite Reese into a camera share session just by clicking on the plus symbol. He'll then get a pop-up in Revizto and say, you're now camera sharing. And what this means is that as I navigate around the project, he's seeing on his screen exactly the same thing that I'm seeing. But again, what's really useful is down the bottom, there'll be an option here that will say request control. So Reese has now clicked on that, and you can see that he's requested control. So I can then give him control, and my screen is now being controlled by Reese. And if I put my hands up, you can see I'm not touching my mouse. It's like Reese is doing this for me on my screen. So it's in a way, it's like another way to collaborate with one another sort of remotely and be able to make sure that you're talking about the same location and reviewing the same information at the same time on the screen. And the camera share function actually works in VR as well. So you can have people on a PC running it sort of in the real world. You can have people in a VR headset and they can be following around what you're doing. They can also take control and they can walk around the model in virtual reality, and that would update on the screen as well. So again, it's just another collaborative tool that we have within Revizto to allow users to work together seamlessly and really understand what's going on. So that's the camera share function. Again, it was an old feature of Revizto 4, never existed in Revizto 5, but it's finally back. Only took 15 months since Revizto 5 came out to put the camera share back in, but it's now back, which for some users, they'll be very grateful for that.
Golden oldie, I think we've heard from some people that have been, especially some of our VR clients where they have multiple people in one immersive environment, but they're scattered around the world. So I'm in the UK, Lewis is in Switzerland, and you could see then that how smooth that session was. Still no audio there, Lewis, right? You'd still need to...
No, it's exactly.
So visual. But, yeah.
So camera share, another new feature or a returning feature for 5.9. The next 2 improvements that we want to talk about are within our Clash automation tool. So Clash automation was released at the end of last year, and we're continuing to make improvements to it as the months go on, and there'll continue to be developments going on here for the foreseeable future as well. One of the new features that we've introduced now is the ability when you're running a Clash test, you can come in here and you can select your cert sets that you want to run. So I'm going to run my structural model versus my mechanical model. And I'm going to say done. And I'm just going to skip through this for the moment. We've now introduced ignore rules into our Clash test. So first of all, I'm just going to run this very quickly without any ignore rules. So I'm just going to run through this. And let's just group by level and by room just for this purpose. And the automation again we'll come on to in a moment. But I can then run this Clash test. And this Clash test, as I said, doesn't have any of the ignore rules in. So it's finding all the clashes that exist between the structural and the mechanical model. So it's going to find about 8,000, I would guess, or 6,000. There we go. So this is finding kind of all the results that exist in this particular Clash now. So we found, let's see the numbers. So it's found 6,000 clashes and group those into 1,000 groups. But in the ignore clashes, I can come in here now and we can start to add stuff in here. So we've got the option to ignore any objects that are in any cert set, or ignore objects that are object A, which in this case is the structural model, or object B, which is the mechanical model. In this case, I want to go through and I want to ignore the installation from the project. So I've created an installation cert set already, so I can just select that from my list. I can apply that. So now when I say okay and I rerun it, it's going to automatically ignore any clashes that are involved with installation on the project. So this is maybe a good example, maybe a bad example, but it's just the idea that it's going to help you remove some of the false positives that you're not actually interested in at the moment. So in this case, it's now told me that 309 of the results were regarding insulation. So the insulation caches are now removed. So all my caches that we're looking at now are between actual like pipes and ducts, not the insulation around it. As I said, that may be a good or a bad example. You probably want the insulation to be picked up on the cache test. It's just the example that I'm giving you here. So that's one of the improvements that we've made in 5.9, the ability to ignore the results. Previously, the way that you had to do that is you had to create cert sets that ignored items, and it meant you had a lot of duplication of cert sets because you would have a cert set for pipes and then a cert set for pipes that ignores the insulation, whereas now you can just create a cert set, in this case for insulation, and just ignore it from all the cache tests going forward. So it will save time on setup and just make it easier to develop these cache tests. So the ignore rules is the next new feature for 5.9. The next new feature in the cache automation tool that we've got is that we've introduced new cache types into Revizto. So previously we had the hard cache, we had the clearances, the tolerances, but we've now, directly above, we've now introduced two new ones. So in this case, I'm going to run a cache test now between my ceilings, my architectural ceilings, and my structural floors. And the cache test type, I'm going to ignore my ignore rules. So as I said, previously we had the hard cache, we had the clearance with a separate horizontal and vertical offset, same with the tolerances. We've now introduced the directly above and directly below results. And this allows you to sort of start looking at sort of buildability and checking that things are positioned correctly. So if you've got, the example I'm going to give you is basically, I want to check the distance between the top of the ceiling and the bottom of the floor is 250 millimeters, because that's my minimum spacing that the building has specified for the ceiling void. So I'm going to create this, and I'm going to check everything that is within 250 millimeters, and anything that is smaller than that, it's now going to fail and give me a result. So I can just say next to this one. Again, I'm just going to group by, let's go by element B, or no, element A, that will do. And I'm going to ignore this one, and I'm going to run this cache test again. So this is checking that every ceiling now has 250 millimeters minimum between the underside of the slab. And we can now come in and we can look at these results. So this is a sloping ceiling that's overlapping here, so that may or may not be an issue. But in this case here, we can see that the ceiling is kind of touching the slab. And yeah, so these are kind of the examples where we can use the directly above, directly below to make sure that there's spacing involved as expected. And this rule will be developed over time. At the moment, it's to check like clearances. But we also plan on developing this over time to include there's a minimum distance between objects. So, for example, you can find all the objects that are further away than they're supposed to be. So in this case, again, if you've got regulations that state that the fire exits, must be directly below the ceiling, you can put in a rule that would say if the ceiling and the fire exit sign aren't touching, you'll be able to generate those, but that'll be coming later on. At the moment, it's just to find where sort of objects overlap. So in this case here, these ones aren't touching. This is probably the one that I was looking for. And if I take a measurement on these two objects, we can see that there's only 62 millimeters between the underside of the slab and the top of the ceiling. So this allows me to go back and review this with the team and understand what's going on, making sure that that's correct, or making sure if it's wrong, we can go in there and redevelop it. So directly above, directly below are allowing you to sort of check these spaces in a better way than a clearance cache would do on its own, because a clearance cache would look at too much information, whereas this is very specifically looking directly below the objects to make sure that it fits and doesn't go above the object or either. So directly below, directly above are two new cache types that we've got. So that's quite interesting, especially with where the development of those will go. And We've also introduced for some people, we still don't support multi screens at the moment. That's mainly down to kind of a Unity workflow rather than a Revizto workflow. But to make life a bit easier for people, because we do understand that it takes up a lot of real estate on the screen, that you kind of lose things. We've introduced this button here, which is collapse all and restore all the windows. So if I want to sort of click on something and then view the 3D model, I can just click this button. All my windows have now shut. I can look around the model, I can see what's going on, and then I can click on it again, and it will restore all the windows that I had previously back open again. So you can quickly sort of minimize and maximize the interface to be able to see the 3D screen again. So that's just something else that we've added in 5.9 as well. And that's pretty much it for the 5.9 new features. But one thing that I want to cover just briefly is something that we've introduced in 5.8, and some of you may or may not be aware of it, but it's to do with our advanced automation that we've got for the clash detection. So I'm going to create a clash test in here, and we're going to call this advanced automation. And I'm going to run a clash test that is, again, quite similar. I'm going to do my structural model versus my electrical model, my fire model, my mechanical model, and my sanitary model. So I'm going to run all the MEP components against my structural file. In this case, I'm going to do just a standard hard clash. I'm going to leave the installation in there. I'm going to group this by level and by room. And I'm going to also group this by the system classification of the MEP components, just to help me understand what's going on. So I can do that. And then we come on to our automation panel. So at the moment, this is our simple automation panel. And what this one here allows me to do is apply a stamp to all the results of this clash test. So in this case, I'm going to use my mechanical stamp. It's going to be marked up as major. We're going to set the deadline so that it's defaulted, let's say 21 days from today. And this is going out to my sort of lead mechanical or designer. So this has been assigned to Matthew, who looks after everything mechanical in this situation. But what we now have is the switch to advanced automation feature as well. So by clicking on this one, it still remembers all the information that's been set previously, but it now allows us to create rules to push issues within the same clash test to different people, set different deadlines, different priorities and things like that. So for example, I can now go into my conditional values and we can add a condition. And it says here, if the clash group has at least one object matching the cert set. So I can click in here and I can go to my cert set list that I've already got set up. And I can say, if it's in my fire protection cert set, then we're going to apply the stamp sprinklers to it. Let's pretend that Matthew isn't our sprinkler engineer either. Let's pretend that Peter is our fire protection engineer. So now every issue that's raised in the clash automation that involves sprinklers is going to be assigned to Peter in this case. And we can say, this is a major priority. So I'm going to change this to critical. I'm going to give the deadline of 7 days. And I'm going to assign that to Peter, who's the sprinkler engineer. I can give this a name as well. So we can call this sprinklers. I can add more conditions in. So I'm going to go in here and we will call this one ventilation. And we can now say if any of the clashes in the project involve ventilation, then we're going to assign this to our ductwork engineer. So this will go to the ductworks. This is a major issue, 2-week deadline, that's absolutely fine, but that's assigned it to Sasha, who designs ducts all days. And again, we can keep going through this. So we can just call this one domestic water, for example, and we can add pretty much as many rules as we want in here. So again, I'll just add my domestic water one now. And in this case, we're going to assign this to our piping engineer, who in this case is Reese. He's now playing piping engineer. So this has now all been set up. There's no deadline set for this one. So let's just change this one to minor for the moment. The pipe works are not I mean, this is obviously wrong. The pipe works would be a priority, but let's just pretend that they're not. And then we have an option here where it says what to do with the results that don't meet these criteria. So at the moment, we've said, if it's domestic water, if it's ventilation, or if it's sprinklers, then we want to raise an issue. We have the otherwise option here, which then says everything else that don't meet those criteria that we've set, we still create an issue and we use our default stamp. Or what we can do is we can say, don't create an issue. So in this case, we're saying if it hasn't been set up here in the rules, then at the moment, those issues are not needed to be raised into the issue tracker. So I'm going to leave this one now as don't create an issue. And I'm going to say finish. And I'm going to run this clash test. I think this will find about 10,000 clashes now. So we'll just give this a few seconds to run through and do this. And now, once these results are generated, obviously they've automatically been grouped in the way that I've set them up. So I can now go in and I can start reviewing them. And again, another feature that may or may not be familiar with everybody is our ability to filter the results within our automation, our clash automation tool. So at the moment, I've got 2,383 groups of results, which is quite a lot to look through. It's going to take a while to figure out where I am, what I'm looking at. So if I just select everything at the moment, just so that you can see every result here. Along the top, we then have our filters. And these filters are really useful to start narrowing down the search. So let's say today we're focusing purely on level 6 of the project. So I can filter by level 6. That will automatically now hide all the other issues. And we're only now looking at issues that are actually located around level 6 of the project. So it makes it really quick and easy for me to review the useful information and not be sort of surrounded by issues that aren't yet going to be reviewed and not worth looking at. So these filters, we can filter by cert sets, we can filter by selections, we can filter by what room they're in, by what space they're in, by all the different kind of information that we've got here. I'll just use level for now. And what I can do at this point is we can now pick all of these issues at level 6, of which there's 209 of them. And I can then mark these as reviewed. This means I want to push them to the issue tracker. So there's 209 at the moment. I can now sync this with the issue tracker. So I'm going to sync the review clashes. We sync that, but rather than 209, it's only creating 73 issues in the issue tracker, because out of the 209 that we've pushed to the issue tracker, only 73 of them meet that criteria of, are they domestic water? Are they to do with ventilation, or are they to do with sprinklers? So it's allowing me to sort of select everything, push it in, but it will only raise the issues that we've specified as relevant to the review process at the moment. So I can say, okay, I can go into my issue tracker now. I'm just going to filter by test, and I can't remember which test. I think there's, so yeah, this one here. So we can now see that it's created all those issues. This issue here is supply air. So that's automatically on my ductwork stamp, and that's being pushed out to my ductwork engineer. We can come down here. So this one, fire protection, this is on my sprinkler stamp. It's been assigned to my sprinkler engineer. The priority is set to critical, and it's only been given 7 days from today for them to fix. So the advanced automation is allowing you to take the results of one clash test and immediately push them out to the right people, depending on the rules that you generate. So the advanced automation is a really useful function that saves an awful lot of time. You don't need to push the issues in and then manually go through them and change the assignees, change the statuses and things like that. You can do it all directly from the clash automation. So it's done the moment that you push it to the issue tracker, and therefore immediately the right person is notified and they can then start the process of fixing those issues. So yeah, if you're a Revizto Plus user and you haven't looked at the advanced automation yet, or you're not overly familiar with it, do reach out to your Revizto technical contact, and they can jump on a call and they can show it to you in more details. But yeah, for me, I think that's kind of everything that we wanted to show today. So
yeah, perfect. I've just fired up a poll actually, which Lewis wasn't aware of, but sort of asked the question anyway. So for those on the call, if you could just select an answer there. So are you using Revizto Plus? Yes or no? And if not, would you like to? It's not showing the full text there. So if you'd like to learn more, I'd like to learn more. So please have a member of the team reach out to me. And if that is the case, then we'd be able to assist with setting up a trial and working with you to see some of these incredible benefits that Lewis has just run through quite quickly today. And that was really the purpose of it. I just want to draw your attention to our field day that we hosted. Well, there's a number of them happening around the world at the moment, but one that stuck out in my mind was the one we run in London, Lewis, with ISG, Jacobs and Multiplex, all talking about their use of Revizto Plus. And just a few stats from those. Lewis touched on the time savings, but to quantify that, ISG mentioned on a number of occasions that their coordination time has been reduced by 50%, which is just incredible for us to hear that. So as you can imagine, their use is ever growing. Multiplex mentioned they're saving just shy of £200,000 on prelims, and now they've implemented Revizto Plus, and they've been able to reduce the amount of technology that they're using for drawing review and looking at models and clash detection and tracking clashes. All of that's done in one place. And Jacobs as well with some crazy stats. I think it was 4 days down to 3 hours now. So I can see everyone's answered that poll, which is great. So it looks like there's a mixed bag here, 50-50, yes and no, which that's interesting. So some of you come here to learn as existing users, and some of you are curious as well. So that's great to see that. So I guess if I just take this opportunity now we've got a few minutes left to open the floor to questions. So if you do have any questions, then now's the time to ask. Whilst you're thinking of them, I'm just going to pull up my screen again to let you know how you can get in touch with us. Email, Twitter, LinkedIn, lots of our content is online as well. But yeah, please do reach out to us if we can help. And if you've got a question now, then ask away. I'll give it 30 seconds. And if there aren't any, then we'll leave you get on with the rest of your busy days. I think that was pretty much everything, Lewis. I've usually got 1 or 2 questions prepped for you, but yeah, you've run that a couple of times now, so covering everything, which is fantastic. Nothing coming through at the moment, so thank you. Look forward to hearing from you all soon. If there are any questions, send them through. Get in touch. We'd love to hear your feedback, and we'll see you at a field day in person soon, or at one of our next webinars. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. See you soon. Cheers.